Peace be with all the good people out there. How are you guys doing? Welcome to the program. I hope you're all doing well. So we continue our program today, going through the historical orbit of Eritrea's agony, which is the title of the journal that we're using, written by Dr. Alam Sagad Abbay. It's a very, very intriguing and amazing journal. So we discussed in our last discussion, when we last met, we basically talked about how the Ethiopian chauvinism created Eritrean nationalism. It created Eritreanism as we came to know it. And if I can go back to any particular quote. Yeah, so as Dr. Alam Sagad mentioned, armed with the heavy artillery of resistance against the pathology of Amharanization and political centralization, the restless, nascent Eritrean intelligentsia suffered from what can be called the neurosis of Eritreanism, a sense of superiority and exceptionalism. This is when it came about. So, and he goes on to talk. We spoke about this in the last video. So if you guys want to know what I'm referring to, refer to the video before this one. I believe it was lesson 8. Discussion 8. Forgive me. So we spoke about how the Pakistanis and the Indians and the Italians and the Pakistanis found an allegiance with each other because so Pakistan did not want Christian Muslim Eritrea to be sent back to Christian Ethiopia, and the Italians, obviously they hated Ethiopia, so they didn't want their old colony to go back to with their enemy, the Ethiopians. So the Eritreans were kind of in this. As you can see, Eritrea was, and we'll learn more about this in the book by Mr. Walde Jesus Ammar when we get to that text. We'll see that Eritrea was a nation that was subject to the disposal meaning like what would be done with it after Italy was in someone else's hands. The British were the ones responsible. Someone was always doing something on behalf of the people, which they didn't ask for, meaning the people the natives who were found in the northern land, which is what we know today as Eritrea. I don't like using this slave name, but the natives, they were subject to another a superpower's desire. So it's Italy, was one of them. We start with Italy in this text, and we start with Italy in the text by Walde Jesus Ammar, God willing. We start with the Italians, and then we move to the British, and then we move to the to Haile Selassie's Ethiopia, and we move to Mengistu's Ethiopia, until they gain independence, and we reach what those of us who are sane consider to be tyranny. In any case, so that's what we discussed, is how basically Amhara chauvinism, which was even propagated by Mengistu, continued into his era after the ousting and the overthrow of Haile Selassie. So it continued. Aggression against Eritreans continued. The Amharanization to some degree. I don't know if the degree was equal to Haile Selassie's, but to some degree it still was being pushed against on the Eritreans. So the last thing that we read was that germinated in Amhara ethnic nationalism. Before anything, because I'm going to start. I believe it. I believe. Of course, I believe. I begin in the name of God, the compassionate, the merciful. I praise and I glorify Him as He ought to be praised and glorified. So, the last what we read was germinated in Amhara ethnic nationalism. Eritreanism was a reactive nationalism. Without the former, the latter would have been unimaginable, because most Eritreans are peasants, and peasants do not understand nationalism. Risk averse, they tend to be apolitical. They tend to have nothing to do with politics. Peasants. So you see, so the Amhara ethnic nationalism is what caused Eritrean reactive nationalism. Let's continue and see what is being said. Consider the fact that the Trans-Marab subsists meagerly. The anxiety of providing daily bread for families shapes the behavior of the people. The anxiety of providing daily bread shapes the behavior of the people. People are trying to put food on the table. Or like George W. Bush said, put food on your family. Forgive me for the joke. It's not something that we should be joking about, because this is something that people do with a lot of honesty and hard work. So a person who's a peasant or in a farm or a farmer is someone who's very, this person is much more, in my eyes, he tends to have more value than the king. He tends to have more value than the ruler. So, the anxiety of providing daily bread for families shapes the behavior of the people. Politics is, thus, a luxury to the peasantry whose dictum is Zibaraku Tsahaina Zinagase Nugusna. The star that shines is our sun, and he who is crowned is our king. That's their dictum. So the star that shines is our sun, and the one who is crowned is our king, and that's it. It ends there. That's how it works for I believe this is how it goes in every land, not just in Eritrea. So that was exactly how a reporter described the 1940s Eritreans. That was exactly how a reporter described the 1940s Eritreans. Quote, of the 800,000 unlettered peasants and nomadic shepherds, only a tiny minority are in any degree politically conscious. The Eritrean's horizon is bounded by the tribe or the village community. He does not know what he wants, and he would accept any regime which did not disturb the quiet tenor of his way. He would accept any regime which did not disturb the quiet tenor of his way. So they're bounded by the tribe or the village community. And this is what our areas are about. We have tribes. People seem to forget that Ethiopia, it's funny because in the old day, they are old days now, but in my earlier days of learning of knowing about Ethiopia and Eritrea, I always thought that Ethiopia was basically Amhara people. I didn't know about many of the tribes that lived there. So to me, Ethiopian was just like one race. And Eritrea was practically, I knew there were different kinds of Eritreans, but they were practically the one race too. Eritreans, Tigrinya, and Amharic. This is what I knew. I didn't know that we had all these different distinct tribes. And what happened, and that's good. And what happened is when we came to Ethiopia maintained what I see, Ethiopia maintained its tribal, natural tribal ways, organic ways. They maintained it even until this day, to some degree. maybe to the highest degree. Eritrea, I believe, may still have that, but what's portrayed and how people speak, they speak as if there is no tribe. It's just one nation. We're all Eritrea, Eritrea for Eritreans, and everyone else shut up. That's how they behave. When in reality, we still have tribes. If you go to Adam Sagad's book, as I should have mentioned in the beginning, if you're interested in this, even if you're not, go to Identity Jilted or Reimagined Identity. Read that book. I'm still reading it. But he talks about, the tribal unity between like Tigrinya and between the Tigrayans, Tigrinya speaking, and the Tigrinya of Eritrea, and how they became divided unnaturally. That they are the same people, but they were once just one group. They're one people. Anyone would tell you that. A Bland person would tell you that. Tigrinya are our neighbors, by the way. The Tigrinya, we're sandwiched between Tigrinya and the Tigray. The Bland are Ago. We're sandwiched between them. And we have, and from what I've learned and read, and our cultures are just, they're very close. So and we know them very well. So the Tigrinya, any well-versed Bland person, I don't know about other tribes, but any well-versed Bland person will tell you, yeah, they're the same. They're the same people. Any well-versed person, human being, anyone who's read will tell you that. But you see, what happens is you end up with a nationalism that's toxic and unhealthy when you have this kind of situation. That suddenly you have this, because if you guys have observed, as time passed, look at how much more aggressive and vicious, many Eritreans became. How vicious and aggressive are they? When it comes, some of them, I'm not making this up, some of the most vicious and aggressive people that I've met in my life, I'm an Eritrean, that I've met in my life, after the Zionists, are Eritreans. I've never met anyone more aggressive in this world when it comes to the nation. They're so aggressive and vicious and sensitive when it comes to this topic, as if they created Eritrea by hand, as if they created it, when they had nothing to do with its creation. It's like they're shouting the Italians' slogan. I'm not saying they should be shouting Ethiopia's slogan or someone else's slogan, but the way that they do things, everything, you could tell this is some mental issue, personality issue that they learn. When the Tigray war was going on, look how vicious they were. That should be a clear evidence. They were extremely vicious. And if you say anything against the government of Eritrea, they call you a Tigrayan, which is an honor. Why not? If I'm a Tigrayan, if I'm from some other nation, it's an honor to be a human being. But they call you a Tigrayan. They'll use certain terms. Amhara were doing this too. They may still be doing this. If you speak against their chauvinism, you're a Tigrayan. I don't know if it still applies now, but during the war, and even shortly after the war, if I'm not mistaken, Tigrayan. They label you. They don't want to hear the truth. They just want to, they're aggressive. This is unhealthy. That's why I say that if this dog, Isaias Afewerki, gets, this is a noble dog. The insult is not to the dog. The insult is to the so-called human. When that person is gone, that's why I said Eritrea will fall into a civil war, because you're going to have people who are very, very aggressive, wanting to defend that tyranny, that way of doing things, and others. Isn't that what happened in places like Switzerland and wherever Brigade Nahamadu was going, when they were crashing their parties crashing the Sha'biya parties, Higdef parties? They would go and the festivals, and they would, disrupt them. In Tel Aviv, in Israel, people, so-called, it's not the Zionist controlled areas. This was all, they were killing people. People were being killed. I think because it's easier to do it there. Perhaps. That's my guess. It's easier to do it there than anywhere else. Imagine if they were in Eritrea. Let's continue. So what is the source of this reporters in the 1940s of the 800,000 unlettered peasants? Unlettered, I believe, means illiterate. Peasants and nomadic shepherds. Only a tiny minority are in any degree politically conscious. What is her, his or her, or what is the source? Let's check it out. So, Martin Moore, Italy's oldest colony may go to Abyssinia. Daily Telegraph. I believe that's from a newspaper. Italy's oldest colony may go to Abyssinia. If I'm not mistaken, Eritrea was Italy's first colony. Her first baby. Okay, so a similar observation was made in the 1950s. You see, Dr. Alam Sagat backs his claims up with evidence. So a similar observation was made in the 1950s. When Eritreans understood neither the word nor the concept of federation. They understood neither the word nor the concept of federation in the 50s. According to Asfaha Walde Mikael, Eritreans could not understand the federal constitution because politically they were as immature as children. What's the source? You're lying, Sammy. Source is Earl J. Ritchie, American consul, reporting conversation with chief executive of Eritrea. I'm Consul Asmara to the Department of State, Washington, D.C., April 24th, 1958, dispatch number 76. That's what he said. It's not an insult. This is just what the situation was. The Italians are the ones who messed the place up. It's not that the Eritrean is born a fool. Italians are the ones who ruined the place. If you're going to strip people, the Italian motto was keep the Eritrean mind empty and keep his belly full. A similar observation was, we already read that. So, as stated earlier, Italy's rationale against extending civic codes and liberties to the natives as something they would not understand or desire was not altogether an exaggeration. It was not an exaggeration. The Italians said that it would be something they would not understand or desire. Against extending the civic codes and liberties to the natives. They gave themselves, to the Italians, civic codes, but the natives had to go through slavery. That was because they said these people won't understand any of this stuff. It's not even something they want. And we're still using the name Eritrea. And we called it Eritrea, like it's like some type of airline. Eritrea. We keep saying Eritrea. That's their name. It's the word they gave us. Someone might say, well, it means Red Sea. It means this. Who cares what it means? Who gave it to you? It's a slave name. In this context, the name still carries with it the oppression of colonization. If you don't learn this way, then go look at what happened to the slaves, the African-American slaves. They were given names that are not evil names. I don't see anything wrong with being named Malcolm Little, but yet he chose to change it because not because the last name is Little, because that's a name he didn't give to himself. It was given to him by a slave master. His issue is not with the name itself. His issue was with who gave it to him. Same thing with Eritrea. Eritrea. So, as stated earlier, Italy's rationale against extending civic codes and liberties to the natives meaning the Eritreans, as something they would not understand or desire, was not altogether an exaggeration, albeit self-serving. It is, therefore, the state policies and behavior that alienated the otherwise acquiescent Eritreans. It is the state policies and behavior that alienated the otherwise acquiescent Eritreans. Clearly, Eritrean nationalism and its germinator, Amhara ethnic nationalism, were dialectically related. To understand the one is to understand the other. You have to understand Amhara nationalism in order to understand Eritrean nationalism. That's where it came from. Arguably, Eritrea was ejected from Ethiopia after the Adwa victory in 1896, when those who were south of the Marab managed to defeat the Italians. The Italian conquerors, the Italians wanted to take a chance at taking Ethiopia. They were defeated at Adwa. Adwa is in Tigray, so northern Ethiopia. So arguably, Eritrea was ejected from Ethiopia. After the Adwa victory in 1896, Menelik reconciled with the Italians, but not to reclaim what he had willfully ceded in 1889 at the Treaty of Wuchale. He reconciled with the Italians, but not to take back what he got rid of in 1889 at the Treaty of Wuchale. The Eritreans, Menelik is the one who sold them out. Another Amhara nationalist. I believe he was. I'm not sure. The reason I say I'm not sure is because I haven't read it. But judging by who he was, it's Amhara nationalism. Well, an earlier kind. I said that's right. I said I would correct any mistakes I made. Shoa is is part of the Amhara region. I said that it's part of the Oromia region. I was in an earlier discussion that we had. I said it's part of the I was debating in my mind. I said I think it's part of Oromia, but it's part of what is known as the Amhara region. So yeah, so Menelik, he did not reclaim what he gave to the Italians at the Treaty of Wuchale, and that was another kind of betrayal, and and he may not have systemically hurt Eritreans, but he did hurt Eritreans by selling them. This led to the Eritrean grief of remaining lost in the hands of the Italians. Lost in the hands of the Italians. The source for that is Johannes Kolmodin, or Kolmodin, Traditions de Tzazagga a Hazagga. That's, I believe it's a French source. I don't speak French, but that's it's in his book, The Traditions of Tzazagga and Hazagga. Johannes Kolmodin. I'm not sure how to. I know there are two. I believe those are two groups from the Tigrunya ethnic group. I need to see the Guz to see how it's pronounced. In any case, so so the Eritreans, this led to the Eritrean grief of remaining lost in the hands of the Italians. So it started with one Amhara, and it continued on later on. During World War II, they were relieved of their colonial yoke when Italy was defeated and forced out of the region in 1941, sloganizing Ethiopia or death. Eritreans, particularly the Kabesa Christians, most anxiously returned to Ethiopia in 1952 only to be alienated by the state policies. So, during World War II, they were relieved of their colonial yoke when Italy was defeated and forced out of the region in 1941. Okay? Sloganizing Ethiopia or death, Eritreans, particularly the Kabesa Christians, which are basically the Tigrinya group, ethnic group, most anxiously returned to Ethiopia in 1952, only to be alienated by the state policies. Worse still, during Eritrea's anti-colonial armed struggle against Ethiopia, both the imperial and military regimes, meaning both Haile Selassie and the Derg, both the imperial and military regimes responded with numerous pogroms against civilians. In 1967, the first pogrom was committed in Addi Ibrahim, western Eritrea, where soldiers burned more than 100 houses and stabbed some 300 civilians to death. They burned more than 100 houses and stabbed 300 civilians to death. This was during Haile Selassie's time. In 1988, the Derg's most notorious pogrom occurred in Shib. I don't know if it's pronounced Shib. I'll look it up. So occurred in Shib, northern Eritrea, where more than 400 civilians were brutally massacred. Source, state atrocities were documented and broadcast during the armed struggle era to keep the memory alive in a special program called Inayin. We have not forgotten. EPLF Department of Information, 1989. Inayin. More than 400 civilians brutally massacred by the Derg. Such senseless state policies forced the youth to join the ELF and EPLF. It forced the youth to join the Eritrean Liberation Front and the Eritrean People's Liberation Front, which came out of the ELF, Eritrean Liberation Front. People did not have the luxury of asking whether secession was in their best interests, since both the imperial and military regimes were too inimical to them. Joining the guerrilla fronts became a necessity, not a choice. It became something that they had to do. It was not a choice. It was this miserable failure of the imperial and military regimes to sincerely listen and properly address Eritrean grievances that led in 1991 to the ejection of Eritrea from what Eritreans had been referring to as the Ethiopian motherland. That's what happened. So the governments failed. I had mentioned earlier on that what would have happened if the Ethiopian leadership did not abuse the Eritreans, because the Eritreans were under the Italians. No good came out of it. The British, no good came out of it. Yeah, they built some schools here and there. Still, you have a foreigner on your land. What the hell is he doing there? Third, Ethiopia had a chance to bring people together, like people that are alike, because the people who are in Ethiopia currently are a lot of them are the same people that are in Eritrea. If you don't believe me, look at the tribes that are in Eritrea and look at the tribes that are in Ethiopia. You want to do further research? Study their origins, the tribes. Ethiopia had a chance to incorporate a people who are the same people. Afar, Kunama, Tigrinya, etc. They didn't. They gave the people a reason to join opposition. Let me... Okay, so we'll end this discussion here. And then we'll go to the final discussion, which is unhappy with itself. Eritrea unhappy with itself. We'll move to that one after this one. And that will be the final part of this journal, this magnificent journal, which brings revolutionary points. These points are revolutionary points. What we have read, the journey that we went on, is just... it's thought-provoking. It's if the people, think. I mean, it's just there's so much that we can do, that can improve conditions, that can improve matters. If we just change the way we think, if we just If we change the way we think, set emotions aside, but there's too much ego and pride. Too much ego and false pride. This is the issue. A person should think many times before waving a flag. Anyways, so next time we're going to go to the final before the conclusion, which is the conclusion is 2 paragraphs, but the final section of the journal is unhappy with itself. So we were unhappy with Italy, unhappy with Ethiopia, unhappy with itself. Until then, keep safe. Peace be with all the good people out there. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.